Hi, I'm Tim. In today's video, we'll go over the ParkZone line of ultra-micro radio control electronics. Let's get to it. Many of us who enjoy flying radio control model aircraft have always had an interest in smaller radio control aircraft, maybe even models small enough to fly indoors. This is great when I lived in the Chicago area. The winters are cold, windy. Indoor was a good place to fly. The problem was technically this is very hard to do because the radio equipment in the early days of RC was just heavy and bulky, and small lightweight electric motors just didn't exist. This all changed about 2010 with Horizon Hobby and ParkZone, where they came out with a line of ultra-micro radio control electronics. We'll discuss this in detail throughout the video. These are the electronics and the propeller along with the battery. This changed everything. Horizon Hobby could come out with a very complete set of lightweight radio control models that could fly well indoors, and the hardware, the radio control electronics, lend itself for modelers to take that electronics and make other models, such as Guillow's model airplanes, fly with radio control flight. So let's take a look at what would be a normal radio control installation for the inside a model airplane. We have a battery, in this case a 2-cell LiPo battery, 7.4 volts. Is connected to the electronic speed controller, in this case a Talon 15 from Castle. The electronic speed controller is connected to the brushless out runner motor with the propeller, receiver, and servos. Again, the power from the battery, 7.4 volts, goes into the ESC. The full voltage provides the motor. Step down to 5 volts to power the receiver and the servos. So what we see here is a 3-channel setup for throttle, rudder, and elevator. Now, with the ParkZone Ultra Micro electronics that we have right here, everything that you see along here is right here. This is the battery right here, which is the battery in the ParkZone microsystem here. The electronic speed control is built into the brick here. The motor is right here, of course, with the propeller. The receiver is built into the brick here, and the 2 servos are contained, these linear servos right here. Notice also that there are plugs for additional servos. You can get aileron servos, which are right here, that plug into here for full 4-channel control of your model with the ParkZone Ultra Micro radio control equipment. With today's radio control equipment that is on 2.4 gigahertz, this is the modern digital radios. That's really all you can buy these days. The transmitters have a computer memory that you load each individual model as characteristics. You give the model a name, say ParkZone, Piper Cub, whatever, and any application of that control system to the model, servo reversing, exponential, dual rates, is specific to that model. The other nice thing about this feature is that when you select that model, it is bound electronically to the receiver. In this way, you can have multiple models flying at the same time without interference because the transmitter is electronically binded to just that one receiver. It's a very nice capability. Now, all of the transmitters these days have a wide range of models that can be memorized. The Spectrum DX6, which I use, has a model memory of 250 models, so you're not going to run out any time. The important thing with the ParkZone equipment that I found is that it's important to have your transmitter on first when you power up the receiver. If you power up the receiver first, it will go into the bind mode. It's looking for a transmitter to bind with, and you don't want to do that every time you turn it on. But for this demonstration, we're going to go ahead and power this up without the transmitter to show how you bind a transmitter to the ParkZone equipment. Okay, so now we're going to bind the system. So we'll go ahead and turn this on. We'll plug it in. The flashing signal, looking for a bind signal. We'll hold down the button and we'll turn on the transmitter. You can see once we've binded it, the light is steady, and with the elevator, you can see the servo going up and down. Aileron is over here, and again through the computer we can move that over to this stick, and I'll hold the engine, and there's plenty of power for this motor. And with the ParkZone electronics, the Propeller provides enough thrust for a model up to about 3 ounces of weight. Above that, you're going to have a little bit of trouble with the model flying. And as I mentioned, when you depower the system, the best thing to do is to remove the power from the airborne system first. Then you turn off the transmitter so everything stays connected. One thing about these E-flite systems is the recharging system for the battery. Normally you have a fairly involved charger, plugging in, balancing, etc. These are single cell, you don't need any balancer. And this is a USB port for any computer. You simply plug in the battery here. The red light comes on when it's charging, light goes out when it's done charging. It really couldn't be any easier. So let's talk a little bit about mounting considerations for the ParkZone electronics. This is a foam glider that I got from Michael's that I converted to radio control flight. You can see the electronics here, the motor, then the rudder and the elevator. So this part goes right here. One thing that I do want to point out that's important is these electronics have a front and a back. Notice the gears right here. This is where the control rods connect on a linear servo. If the gears are towards the back, the control rods will go through the wheel. It just won't work. So make sure that you have the gears towards the front of the model. And a good way to remember that is the plug-in for the motor goes into the back. And that's the same for both sides. You'll notice on the electronics that there's a lot of exposed electronics on the back of the circuit board. You want to be careful that there's some sort of foam padding, very thin padding underneath so you don't disrupt or break those solder joints. I mounted on the phone. In this case, I used plastic electrical tape to basically hold everything in place, a little bit of epoxy glue to make sure that those straps stay in place. And that's a very firm mounting. The control rods for a smaller installation of the music wire, you'll have the yellow guides right here epoxied into place. They connect with a control horn to the back. What I do to help the initial adjustment is this is one music wire section, this is another wire. They overlap here with heat shrink tubing. I get the controls perfectly centered, shrink the heat tubing, a little dab of epoxy at each end. That's a good start for your control zone setup. Same for both sides of the model. Also, while we're on the subject, the center of gravity is important for any of these installations because it is so lightweight. Notice I had to add a washer to get the proper center of gravity for this model. Now let's take a look at the Horizon Hobby website where you can order these electronics. There's a couple variations on it. We'll see on the website. The good news with the Horizon Hobby, they've got a very good technical chat line assistance. If you have any questions on the transmitter or what they do, internal changes, just go ahead and give them a chat or a call before you buy off Horizon Hobby. In this case, I did a Google search for ParkZone Ultra Micro radio control equipment. You can see a couple of receivers here. That'll bring you right to the Horizon Hobby website. Good website. You can see a picture of the receiver brick here with the servos and the connector. Down below is always good information with an overview, compatible products, some technical specifications, user reviews. These are worth looking at. It is fragile. And in this case, the manual is just a safety manual. And just a view of a Guillow's model conversion. This is the Guillow's Lancer right here that I converted to radio control flight. You can see the motor that's mounted in front. And inside of the ParkZone electronics, connector for the battery, and the Velcro for the battery and back here. So this is an ideal conversion for the ParkZone Ultra Micro electronics. Everything, motor, battery, airplane, is about 2.4 ounces, and it flies very well with this Ultra Micro system.